welcome to episode 4 of the Silver Savage podcast. This episode is brought to you by Combat Iron Apparel, the highest quality apparel for fitness-minded patriots. Visit combatironapparel.com and use the code SilverSavage10 to get 10% off your next purchase. This episode is also brought to you by Masada Tactical, the premier self-defense and self-protection training group teaching professional warriors and civilians alike. Visit training.masadatactical.com and use the code SilverSavage10 for 10% off your next training class. Today we have Tom Alibrando on our show. Tom is the National Sales Manager for IWI, Israeli Weapons Industry, and runs the IWI Academy. Before joining IWI, Tom spent 11 years in law enforcement, fulfilling various positions including SWAT. He was the lead firearms instructor for the Police Academy and was an instructor for various private contracting companies as well. Tom worked with Blackwater during its heydays, as well as other U.S. State Department organizations on anti-terrorism and other related programs. Tom is a savant when it comes to firearms in general and foreign guns in particular. A savage on his own right, here's a fun little chat with Tom Alibrando.
This whole conversation, BK and I earlier, we were having our own moments about our insanity.
Oh my God. Nice.
Yeah, goes long and far, and
yes, embrace the chaos in your mind.
Yeah, the one thing I'm trying to figure out right now is I'm not on with you and BK anymore, and I can't get rid of this stupid thing that says waiting. How do I get rid? What the fuck?
This is how we're gonna start the podcast because
I'm tactically sound. Technically, forget about
not so much. You did a good job on Instagram. All right, let's get
I'm turning my phone off. Fuck this. I'm going to start all over, slide it off. I'll kill the phone. It's like a hard restart. It probably needs to happen anyways.
Tom Alibrando.
Oh, my God.
Going, brother. Listen, you're the only person that I'm going to do this podcast, and I have guns in the background. I have whiskey in my hand, and I feel at home.
Whiskey?
Cheers.
Did somebody say whiskey? Doing it right. There you go, buddy.
He's a Marine. He wants to one up everybody.
By the end of this, we're not going to know what we're saying to each other anymore. A fight will start. Did you ever see that meme? It says, it shows a corporal, then plus bottle of whiskey equals Lance Corporal. It shows
the digression.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay. Well, my dad was a Marine. I think he was a true Marine because he got demoted twice. He got thrown in the stockade twice. So
I did 3 days in the correctional custody unit.
Oh God!
So because I was salvageable. so
if they only knew.
and when I went through, you were still breaking rocks in the sun, in unison and in cadence.
And you actually shot iron sights in basic training.
Oh yeah, I am classically trained.
There you go.
What did you tell me earlier today, Steve? That what sound did they make you do?
When you were doing your in combat training or you're doing your field operations, we would yell "Butta jam,
butta jam." Yep. You see, so it's kind of funny you say that because when we were doing the DS training, we had a mix of Army and cops and Marines and there's an occasional squid in there or whatever. So, but when everybody was we were doing our peels and stuff like that, and we did it dry before we did it with anything else. And you would hear all these butta jam, kapow, kapow, and pew, 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 pew. It depended on the service. You got kind of different things, and I'm going.
You throw an Israeli in there, and it would be.
I'm looking at Marines. I'm like, it's not even firing live rounds. How is it jamming? I'm just curious.
I guarantee you, a Marine can jam a tri-rifle.
That is a fact.
Tom, well, I appreciate you joining us tonight. I know you just got off an Instagram live video that took almost an hour. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. But before we get rolling, I mean, you and I know each other. We got the opportunity to teach together and hang out. But some of our listeners may not. So tell us a little bit who Tom is. Where are you coming from? What's your background?
I have no idea.
Perfect. Awesome.
I'm Sicilian. I'm probably a criminal.
And listen, this is the forum to say whatever you want. It's all good. It's a safe place.
It's a safe space.
This is where I blow it big time. That's what's happening. I got an opportunity. I'm going to screw this up right from the get-go. So let's see. I was born in Jersey, but I actually went to school in Arizona. I went to Virginia, then Arizona. I was a political science major with a concentration in the Middle East. So I studied your people a lot, BK.
That's a mess.
And all the wars that happened in between. And I did a lot of international terrorism stuff when I was in college. I left that. It had nothing to do with terrorism, but I ended up becoming a cop for 11 years. All that intel, all that information, and it did nothing for me. Became a cop in Arizona. I spent 11 years doing that, 7 years of which was a sniper, and I was a CQB guy. And I ended up teaching all that stuff. I taught at the Academy, everything from some constitutional law stuff, because I did take a lot of con law when I was in political science. And I could speak Latin to street. That was the hard thing for a lawyer to do. They couldn't translate, concepts to practical application sometimes. So I was able to translate that. I taught firearms, did all that stuff, and taught for ASPost, Arizona Post. I left that, and I got a call from Blackwater, and I ended up going out there for about 10 years. It was DS Class 1, so the Negroponte's detail was already there, but they needed more guys for the other ambassadors. There were actually multiple ambassadors in Iraq at the time, and they all needed protection. So we were the first on the ground on that detail. And I worked. That's where I met Boone, as a matter of fact, in Toronto. Was in that first 6 months when I was in Iraq. And I did various things for BW. So I did everything from what we called open enrollment. Open enrollment kind of covered everything. We did civilian training on one side, but we did SWAT training, law enforcement training, and we did military. So if they needed a special course, we would actually build courses based on a need that they had. We trained Coast Guard, maritime security units that were going over into the Gulf. We trained Marines. We trained Army. I work for anti-terrorism assistance programs. So we were training foreign nationals from all over the world.
This is all at Blackwater?
At Blackwater. And then I went overseas and did it too. So I spent some time in Africa. That was part of a DOD program called, it was the counter narcotic CNTPO, counter narco terrorism program office. That was under DOD. But we work with state there as well. We had a liaison in Abuja that we were always dealing with. So anti-terrorism assistance, Mali, Senegal, Macedonia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, all those guys, we trained those guys up. And it was mostly counterterrorism and advanced counterterrorism. So when you get to the ACRT course, I did this counter sniper portion of it. That was part of my job. And then I did the CQB portion of it. Then we had guys that did explosive breaching. That wasn't me. I didn't do that part of it. And then we had command and control. So, and it was everything. It was tubular assaults and regular structures and things like that. And then I also worked with WIPS. Finally, the last 3 years I was there, which was Worldwide Protective Service, and I still deployed in between. I did some protective ops. Some of it was training related. I mean, it just depended on the mission. I was a assistant team leader at one point. I did intelligence for my team. If you were a TC, a tactical commander, you were a de facto intel guy, because one of your jobs was to choose route selection and things like that. So you had to be up on what was happening, methods of attacks, pre-attack indicators, all that stuff. So did a lot of that, developed some of my own sources up in northern Iraq, as a matter of fact. So I got to actually exercise some of that, which was kind of cool. I was a foreign weapons freak. So I did that when I was a cop, believe it or not. And then I did it, obviously, when we went overseas. When I was in northern Iraq in particular, some of our crew serve weapons were not American. They were PKMs, RPDs. It was all complex stuff, but I was already familiar with it. So I was a de facto armorer up there and working on those guns and shooting them, and they were pretty cool. I left BW. It changed names like 4 times, and I managed some programs, our direct foreign engagement, things like that. Left there. And I went to IWI, Israel Weapon Industries, in 2016. I've been there ever since. And currently I do 3 jobs primarily. My main job is I'm a law enforcement sales manager. So I'm a sales guy. I go around, talk to agencies. Hey, here's what we got. I may be the worst salesman ever because I'm very honest with things. Like, this is good, but I think this would probably fit what you need a little better, and I think they appreciate that. I do the academy. I run training for the academy and the instructors that work in that, and including the curriculum. And then the last thing I do is I also work on product development occasionally. I get pulled into that. So engineers need to understand the operator side of it, and they're good at making things work, but they need to understand how we use it, and somebody's got to translate that so they understand, how to make it better, make it more usable. Put it to you that way,
Right.
The switch should be here and not here, and it should do this, and this is how we run the gun. They understand their IDF training, which is great. And I'll be honest with you, the cool thing about I have to admit about IWI, I talked to other guys in FN and Beretta and stuff like that, and they're similar insofar as there's a U.S. company with a foreign entity that's really the hub. That's the mothership, and they have a hard time necessarily talking to their engineers or explaining something and saying, "Hey, this needs to change, and this is why." I can literally get on the phone and WhatsApp somebody in Israel and say, "Hey, this is a problem. Are you aware? Can you fix it?" And they go, "Yeah, Roger." So that's kind of unique. I mean, you argue with them. I don't know an Israeli yet that doesn't argue about goddamn
scream.
But it's funny because you get into this heated argument, and then it's like, "You want a cup of coffee? Yeah, let's go get a cup of coffee." And then you're done. It's over. So I love that about them. They're very passionate people, and they have an idea, and you have an idea, and you need. That's where you get a lot of good work, though. You got to hash it out, and that's a good thing. So that's why IWI has been doing pretty well for a while now. It's because they hash it out.
So let's talk about IWI for a second. So you, in 2016, you made a transition from being an operator per se, right? Into
instructor operator, yeah,
into this corporate world, right? How was that for you?
That was a hard change.
Sure.
It was different. I think I can relate from being an instructor. You know this, BK. As you're an instructor, you know how to relate to people and read people. And being a cop helps you do that too, because you kind of know how to read a room and understand, the body language. That's good. So I guess it makes you good at talking to people and saying, okay, I think this is what you're interested in. This is what you're not interested in. But it was a change, and there was people to help me do that. That's for sure. I had when I showed up there, Rebecca was already there, so she was kind of showing me the right and left limit. This is how we do things. This is organizationally how we do it. That was good. I had Casey Flack was there, and he was the CEO, but he still did a lot of stuff having to do with LE. So there was a lot of advice I was getting from him and Rob Walker, who were already there as well. So there's a lot of people that guide me along and kind of get me in the right direction. And the direction changes, by the way. It's never a straight line. There are certain things that are the same, that are protocol. I'm Italian, so you have to use your hands. That are a straight line, and then there's other things that you've got to be able to think on your feet and instantly go, "No, this is what we should do." So it was a change. Believe me.
Perfect. So let's talk about IWI real quickly. I always say that I'm a convert, right? I grew up in Israel. I served in the military in Israel, but I carried an M4 throughout my service. The X95 actually was fielded to my unit first, but after I left my regular service, so I was still a reservist, but I never carried operationally. I converted through you, really, and you and I having discussions, and you showing me the genius behind the system. And as you can see, I own a bunch of them now.
Yeah.
But IWI as an array of weapon systems, right? So you have the bullpup design, the X95. You have an AR platform now, the Zion, which I have one also, which I love. And you have the Galil, which is essentially an AK variant, for lack of a better term, right?
Upgraded, yeah.
Yeah. So when you said about, not being a good salesperson, and, you go to a law enforcement agency and say, well, this may not be the best tool for you, but in theory, IWI has in-house all the tools that they could possibly want, right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get a belt-fed machine gun into an agency. I haven't done that one yet. I haven't pulled that off, but I'm trying.
There's one in Maryland I know of that employs. So
I think I could probably get it in Texas because of the border. They have a lot of problems down there, so that might work. Yeah, we have a wide variety of things, but it's. I just was at an agency today, and they're like, it's funny because I said, "Hey, did you know we make an AR-15 now that we make in the United States?" And they went, "No, but is that an X95?" I'm like, "Oh my God!" They gravitated towards that. I was like, "Okay, we do that too."
So what's unique about design? I mean, it's just another AR, right?
It's just another AR garbage.
I said that on purpose. Tell us what's different. I know the differences, but Steve may not.
So no, it's not just another AR. I think where it takes a hard right turn, slightly right turn, is that it's a high quality system that's not $1,400. That's the key right there. It's a 1 1/8 twist on, the 12.5-inch up to 16-inch mid-length gas system. I think we went the direction of black nitride coating everything. Makes the steel hard. It's corrosion resistant. I mean, it solves a lot of issues, but it makes for a very accurate system, very resilient system. And I know that when we were testing them, we were getting sub-minute with 77 grade in particular. We're getting sub-minute groups up to 10,000 rounds. Like the gun was just shooting well. So a lot of people like that. The M-Lock rail, all that stuff. SOCOM stock, B5. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. And for like an LE price, a law enforcement price for an individual officer, $720.
That's amazing.
You can't beat that. It's just a good system.
And I can speak for that empirically because I think you actually let me play with some of your firearms when we were in Ohio, and you let me hold the Zion. And I think, again, I've in the military, your A2s, and I've used your typical AR platforms throughout my military and law enforcement career. But actually holding the Zion, it just felt slick, it felt light, and it felt usable. It wasn't bulky, it wasn't robust. It was like it's what you need. So I mean, I'm a Galil fan. BK knows this. He's trained me in the Tavor. He wants me to go to your Tavor instructor course, which I truly want to go to. But I'm a Galil fan. Like you, I've studied the Israeli wars. And when I first met BK, he thought I was Jewish because I knew so much about Israeli history. And I'm a fan of the Galil. But holding that Zion, you guys definitely did something different. Although when you look at it with the naked eye, it looks like a typical AR. It's definitely not. So I can definitely speak on that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody says how light it is, but the barrel is actually a SOCOM profile. It's not the lightweight barrel. It's not a pencil weight.
Right.
We went SOCOM barrel, but yeah, we were trying to shave off weight. But that whole thing's made in the U.S. That's our gun. It's our receiver. So it turned out really well. We're pretty happy with it. Don't get me wrong. I've got a couple Galils. We're running a Galil course next year. I got so many emails. I got blown up about it. You got to run a Galil. I'm like, fine. I'm going to do a Galil AK course. Not everybody has a Galil, but the Galil and the AK are so close to each other that I can easily pull that off. That's not a problem. It's not a stretch. So
well, I guess I'll be there.
Okay, we'll see you next year.
It's hard for me to convert back to an AR now that I essentially had to force myself to shoot the X95 and get comfortable with it because I'm Israeli. I want to teach with an Israeli weapon.
Right.
So, and once I got comfortable with it, and you see the genius behind it. I mean, I take my 13.5 with a suppressor mounted, and it's shorter than most 10-inch ARs or even some 7-inch ARs, right? So I can maintain better ballistics at a smaller platform, right? So I don't know. It's hard for me to go back, and I see the genius behind it. And I tell you what sells it to people. I take them to about 100 yards out, and I say, okay, hold it one-handed and get a headshot on that steel. And they all get it. They're like, oh, my God, this thing doesn't move. So.
Yeah, that's what happened today. I had a room full of officers, about 6 officers, and I had them all laid out there, and they pick it up. And at first, it looks like a plasma rifle. So they're holding it all funny, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And then they shoulder it, and they're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, it is. And I went through the reloads, and some of the stuff with them, and they're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. There's one guy was a school resource officer, so the 13-inch gun is they got to be able to hide it and walk around with it if they need to. I'm like, if you want to hide something that's got a lot of chutzpah, a little Yiddish there for you. I said, there you go. That's it. That little 13-inch gun will fit in a backpack. No one will know you have it, but it's there when you need it.
Yeah, and you talk about like current events, the incidents that happen right now, school shootings, right? And the school resource officer may need to take that longer shot where just a 7-inch AR may not suffice, right?
Yeah,
so that would do the trick.
We used to train guys in the active shooter kind of thing, and we trained some federal agencies that had, I can't say who, but where they had federal buildings, and it's this 120-yard, 130-yard shot down a hallway. It's not small at all. It's not a short shot. It's significant, and it's funny because I talk to a lot of officers, and they're like, well, I want a super short barrel. We're not going to shoot very far anyway. And I'm like, that's not true. I've been in urban areas, and you operate in cities too, where you look across the street and up on a third floor balcony where there might be a problem. It's easily 150-yard shot.
Right. And
they can reach you, so you need to be able to reach them.
And I think another important factor to point out with the bullpup Tavors, as a firearms instructor myself, I've seen countless officers not be able to participate in patrol rifle programs because it's front heavy. They can't handle the weapon system. I think the Tavor can help mitigate that because it's so ergonomically balanced when you shoulder it.
Yeah.
I've seen smaller frame people handle it with precision, with no problem. And unfortunately, and I'm sure you've seen it, Tom, I know in our agency it's a big deal. They're afraid of change. This is the way we've always done it. It's unfortunate because with a platform like that, I wrote a 16-page interoffice memo on that rifle alone to try to get it tested in our agency, and it was rejected. But it would solve so many problems and arm so many officers that couldn't do it before because of the front heavy AR platforms. And it's unfortunate. And I know you've seen that, and I'm sure you could talk about that as well.
Well, and that's why we ended up doing the Zion. We're like, fine, if this isn't for you, it does introduce other issues, car mounts and things like that. But if they can't do that, then we have this. And that's kind of what it comes down to. What really kind of crushed getting into new platforms is ammunition shortages, because they do have to go out and train with it. You've got to school them up. They got to get them squared away. So Goodyear Police Department, I'll say this, they were probably, Hidalgo's got over 300, about 300 of them down in Hidalgo County. And Goodyear has 100 of them for patrol. They put them through a 40-hour course on it. So every officer that got issued the gun got 40 hours of training, which I thought was pretty phenomenal. And they've already had a shooting with it. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Everything went fine. Good guys, good, bad guys down. So happy day. But yeah, you're dealing with that kind of issue as well. And I understand that, that there's a training issue as well, but it's not as bad when you get on the gun. It's not as bad as you think. Like, it takes a couple, 3 hours and some repetitions. And then you're like,
yeah, if that, I think BK told me within 2 hours, and I gained a basic level of proficiency within 2 hours with that Tavor, and I fell in love with it. So it wasn't that hard. Yeah.
And Tom is thinking now, I could have done it in one. But
no,
I'm kidding.
No, two's good. Two's real good.
No, and you know what, Tom? To that point, I heard another podcast you were on recently with Boone in Florida.
Yeah,
and you were talking about training that can be done at home with this shortage in ammo, right? So some dry fire training, low round drill training, and if anybody follows you on social media, they can have access to that information.
Oh yeah,
and certainly put that to use. So we're going to talk about that as well. So you're a trainer primarily, right? So I know you come from the tactical world and whatnot, but you're an educator, right? And
I've had a unique and diverse background teaching a bunch of different stuff. But I think what you're alluding to is, the dry fire practice you can do in your house is going to pay dividends on the range. And I think that gets overlooked a lot. Right. And people are, I hate to say it, but they want the bang. They want to go to the range and have fun. But if you are short on ammo, or to be honest with you, if you want to maximize efficiency at the range, you set yourself up with a certain degree of drills. It's like a rehearsal before you go to the range. Right. So what I'm going to do at the range, I'm going to do in dry fire maybe a couple days before, whether it's reloads or something like that. You can do all that dry, or presentation, simple. I'll do occasionally, like I had a focus on dropping into certain kneeling positions and getting a hit on an 8-inch plate at 100 yards in under a certain time. Before I went to the range and executed that, I was, in the old living room with a dot on the wall, dropping into those different kinds of kneeling positions. And a pro timer is a great dry fire tool. Everybody thinks of a pro timer as being a live fire thing, but you can set a par time on it, hit the button, and have it set for 3 seconds. And it's going to give you a start, and then you'll break the shot, see if the dot was on it. You got to be honest with yourself in dry fire. You can't, you can't rationalize a mistake. You have to go, yeah, I screwed that up, and this is where I lost it. This is what I need to correct. So then when I go to the range, what I'm doing is I'm validating what I'm doing dry. And that's a big, boxers are shadow box. They're learning movement, they're learning technique without actually impacting something. So by the time they get to a bag, or by the time they get to a sparring partner or an actual fight, they're replicating what they're doing, basically without hitting something. It's just now they're punching through something. And a lot of that athletic training that those principles you would apply to athletic training, like baseball or football, Muay Thai, whatever, absolutely translates into firearms. It's the same process. And I think that's where people kind of lose it a little bit. So the example that I use when I'm teaching, I talk about repetition. You have to do proper repetition to learn a specific act. You can punch wrong. I've seen a lot of guys, we would do defensive tactics in DT, and I taught some of that, right? Some of it was Krav Maga. You'd be proud of us, BK. It was Krav Maga. Some of it was jiu-jitsu when we got to the ground stuff. Some of it was basic police stuff that you've probably seen, just basic takedowns, things like that. But we would have guys punch. We said, all right, we just want you to punch the bag. Punch the bag with your left hand 10 times, punch the bag with your right hand 10 times. And we were assessing them, and we were surprised how many people didn't know how to punch. They just, they saw it in movies or whatever, but they just never done it. And we're like, wow, you're going to get your ass kicked in a fight, just so you know right now. We wouldn't say that. We don't want to kill their confidence. But so we would start from base level of this is the mechanics of doing something. And it would be slow. You start slowly, and we talk about transitioning weight and hips, coming from the feet, all that stuff. It's what you do, right? And during Krav Maga, right? It starts slow, and then what happens? It increases. Well, what do you do when you learn a draw stroke? It all starts slow, bringing the gun up to your face and driving it out and doing very specific actions. And then gradually it increases. It's the same thing you would do in fighting or swinging a baseball bat or swinging a golf club. It starts slow and then it increases. I think a lot of people miss that. They see the movies and TV, and I'll segue into this. They'll go to a shooting school and, hey, I'm a new shooter. And by the end of the day, they're on the ground upside down shooting. And you're like, you don't know how to do anything.
Right.
You bypassed fundamentals and it's like being a black belt in a day. It's just dumb. It makes no sense whatsoever. Your brain can't comprehend that.
And that's one thing I know I've seen, Tom. You're a professional instructor for a reputable company, and I think you can attest to this. BK, you can attest to this. We're all instructors at some level. There's a misconception in the world that just because someone served in the military or they were in law enforcement for 20 years, that they're experts in firearms or something like that. And it is completely false. You have to have people that actually have, been in operations, that train regularly, that can speak the science behind it, et cetera, like you're doing now. It's not just a matter of pulling the trigger. Why are you pulling the trigger? What's happening when you're pulling the trigger, not just mechanically, but physiologically in your body. I know that's something BK does, I do, and I know that's something you do from the short time I met you on the range. And I think that's something important to talk about because a lot of people have that misconception. Oh, he was a Navy SEAL. Oh, he was MARSOC. Oh, he was this. So he's got to be an expert. I want to learn from him. No knock on them. they're badass motherfuckers. Excuse my French.
They are.
But when it comes to articulating your knowledge and teaching, that's a whole nother world.
A guy in the military or a guy who's law enforcement isn't necessarily a gun guy. There's very few gun guys, like in an agency. They're usually the ones that gravitate towards SWAT and their firearms instructors. That's your gun guy. But mostly, if I get a law enforcement officer in the academy, 90% of them have never touched a pistol before, really, not in any professional setting. They understand that pistol and what to do with it. Beyond that, they don't know anything else. If you hand them, if they have a Glock and you hand them a 1911, they're not going to know what to do with it.
Right.
Just because they're law enforcement doesn't mean that they understand that. Pulling the trigger, whatever. And you're right, they're not necessarily awe-inspiring. I've had other special units. I'm not going to call out a unit, but I've had units come in that I was teaching, and I was like, yeah, these guys are going to be ninja. I got to be tip top. And then I watch, what they're doing, and their basic core skills aren't there. And we had to go, okay, stop. We got to go back and we got to work on, this one thing so we get good hits. It doesn't matter how ninja you look or all the, the Velcro and bullshit. If you can't hit something, it doesn't matter, right? And we've had to do that. I've had to dial back, and they appreciate it. I'll be honest with you. There's a way to present that and say, hey, listen, you're doing good. We need to clean this up. We need to hone this down. And here, I'm going to throw this out too. So we had a lot of special units come through, and they would be rusty. They wouldn't be awe-inspiring. But here's the way I think the military looks at it. And I'm on the outside looking at it. I wasn't military. I worked around those guys for 10 years, though. I got guys that I taught with and I trained them. So you kind of understand a certain mentality. You see something come out. And I think they send them to a school, and law enforcement does the same thing. They're guilty of it, is you go to a school and you shoot for 2 weeks and you get the shooting package. And it's like getting a marksmanship inoculation. All right, you're good. You don't need to worry about it now. You fired, 5,000 rounds in 2 weeks or whatever. You don't need to shoot anymore. You're a ninja. Not understanding that goes away. It stays for a while and I hang on, but it depreciates over time. It's like not rolling on the mat. If you don't do it every once in a while, that those reaction times, the technique starts to go away. It dissipates. So I think they would get that, and then they would go operational. So they go overseas for 6 months or 3 months, depending on the units, 3 to 6 months, some longer. And they're not doing practice anymore because they're out kicking doors. They're training, they're doing operations. And when they're not doing operations, they're planning for the next operation, and they're freaking dog tired all the time because it's the op tempo over there in certain areas was pretty high, especially for the SF cats, because there's not a lot of them. There wasn't enough of those guys, especially when they're working with ANA and all those dudes. So their skills are dropping off because they don't freaking have time. So by the time they cycle back to the States, they see their families and they start getting into a training cycle again. And a lot of those guys were really cool. They'd be like, yeah, we're rusty. We need to work on this because we've been kicking doors and shooting at people and shooting people, actually. So yeah, I get that. And you're right. Not all guys are gun guys. Not dudes who were in certain units were ninjas. I've actually had Marines who were infantry miss targets and stuff before. I know that's weird, but that shit happens. 0311 infantry. How did you miss that? And of course I made fun of them for it. How come the Army guy next to you hit it and the Marine? This is bullshit.
That's wrong.
And I was
so many ways.
I would intentionally that competition, that friction.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden everybody starts to lock on. They're dialing in.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to make up for it. So
one thing I've been saying forever, and I love when I hear you say it in your classes, is that when you teach, and myself included, when I teach, I don't teach how to shoot. Like we see this trend in law enforcement that we teach officers how to pass a qualification test. We don't teach them how to fight, right? And you always say in your classes it's a fighting school. I always say in my classes that I'm not going to teach them how to shoot. I'm going to teach them how to fight with a gun.
Yeah,
and the mindset that's the biggest difference in my mind, and what is missed on a lot of law enforcement and even some military units nowadays. So, I always looked at you as let me rephrase that. You're someone that I always look out for. I go to you for advice. I think you're one of the best instructors I've ever seen, specifically when it comes to firearms.
You need to see more instructors, brother.
Probably. But with that said, so, my view is slightly skewed, right? I've been around a bunch of instructors from my military and law enforcement career and just in the civilian world teaching and being exposed to it. I see a lot of nonsense out there. I see a lot of people that are teaching wrong tactics that are going to get people killed, give people false sense of security. What are your thoughts about, without putting any instructor out there down, but what are your thoughts about the state of training in America right now?
So it's funny. I was scrolling through an instructor page. It's a particular website that shows you all the different kinds of instructors, and you can pick a location and a type of training, and then it spits out instructors in your area, which I think is a cool idea. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at bios, and I'm not bagging on them necessarily saying these guys all suck, but I was an NRA instructor for 2 years. Okay, cool. Awesome. The one guy, I was an EMT, but now I teach firearms, or, and I'm not saying that they can't be good instructors. Does that make sense? So you can be a 2-year instructor and put things in a way that makes sense. However, there is something to be said for experience and a depth of knowledge about where to apply things. And that's hard for somebody who's a basic guy to get. I think, and again, I'm not saying that you can't be a civilian who's not a cop and not military and teach somebody how to shoot well. I think you can. But I think there's a mentality in there about, when to do something, not just how to do it, and not to be a robot. And by the way, this is the stress you're going to go through. I know because I've seen this, right? I've been through this and I understand some of this. And I think that's what adds a little bit more maturity in the training, if that makes sense. I remember seeing a video of a guy, he's actually pretty famous, and he was sitting there and he was having one of those real moments, when you got to get in there and you got to kill as many people as possible. And I'm sitting there like looking at the screen like, holy cow, you're saying this out loud and that's on YouTube forever. Good job. Awesome. He's talking to civilians. He's not talking to dudes that are going out and hunting bad guys, in some kind of conventional war. Conventional wars, for the most part, are over. Right? That's done. All of our enemies blend in with civilian populations now. There's no easy ROE. There's no free fire zone anymore. That went away in 2003. Okay, 2004 time frame. So even the military dudes have to be very selective about what they're doing, unless they're going to an AO like the Korengal, where you had these pockets. It was obviously bad guys. For the most part, that's done. But for a civilian to get that kind of mentality is wrong. You don't want to look for the fight. You don't even want it to happen. But hey, when it does happen, this is how you need to react. And, I'll tell people in the class, in the civilian class in particular, I say, hey, if you can avoid a shooting, if you can not do it, avoid it.
Yeah. Amen.
If there's a way to back out of it, great. If a guy breaks into your house and you point a weapon at him and he runs out the back door, let him go. That's a win right there. That's not you don't shoot him and then drag him inside the house, right? That's bullshit. So, but there's got to be people that are careful of that, and that sort of brings up the Rittenhouse thing a little bit, doesn't it? It's So that's a precarious situation there. So I'm not happy with how he ended up in that scenario. It's clearly self-defense. I don't think the kid meant to shoot anybody. I don't think that was his intent at all. And clearly the jury saw it that way. Having the rifle on his person attracted attention to him. I think the main breakdown with him was he got isolated from his teammates. I think when people were grabbing rifles and hanging around auto dealerships and businesses, they were thinking about the Koreans in California when the riots happened. They were sitting on the rooftop.
Yeah.
The one difference between them and what happened there in Kenosha was the Koreans stayed together. Nobody split off and went on their own. And because of that, I think there was safety in numbers. He got isolated, and then things went terribly wrong. And I think the weapon on his back or on his front attracted attention and drew the idiots towards him and said, well, he's a kid, he's not going to do it. I think that's what really fed into that whole scenario.
To that point, though, Tom, I'm sorry to cut you, but to that point, that goes both ways. First of all, I do agree with you. Situational awareness and the team mentality, there was a breakdown there. But I would argue that kid must have had some training with the way he reacted. Talk about the value of training, right? I don't think Joe Schmo on the street being attacked by 3 people would have the clarity of mind to act it the way he did. There had to have been some stress inoculation done in the past for this kid.
I don't know that because
I don't know either.
They deposed him in court and they went through that, and he shot the weapon only 2 other times. He was going to law enforcement classes because I think he was an explorer or something like that. Okay. So I think there was a mindset in him that was.
That's exactly what I was going to say. A mindset.
I would take a guy with the right mindset over a guy who shot thousands of rounds out of a rifle all day.
Yeah.
When we did SWAT selection for us, and we were choosing team members for the team, it was, yes, we wanted the shooting there, we wanted the core skills. You know what we were really looking for? Mindset. That was the number one thing.
The one we didn't quit.
Yeah, didn't quit. They'd been on the agency for, at the time, I think you had a minimum of, it used to be 5 years. I got on in 3.5. I was kind of a unique case, but they wanted to know how mature you were on the street, that you handled stress well. Because by then, at 3 years, you'd fought people. You had a reputation in the agency, so they knew if you were good or not. I can train anyone to shoot is what it came down to. But for them to work as a team and to keep their cool, I mean, we wanted a guy who, on the radio, he'd be in a fight with somebody and you couldn't tell he was in a fight. If he was chasing somebody, he's like, yeah, I'm northbound on whatever, and he's turning this way. I want that guy because he's mellow. Nothing rattles him. That's what I want. I think he had the right mindset, which is unusual for a 17-year-old. And I think that's what really pulled him through. His shots were all close range. So it wasn't it's not a matter of accuracy. Like, he hit the guy in the bicep, the other guy, he stitched up. Less than 3 yards on almost everything. It's not like he was shooting 50 meters.
I think the same thing. In my mind, it was more the fact that he was able to think under stress, which is lost on a lot of people. That shows that, I don't know, even if he just went for the what-if game in his mind and already start kind of rehearsing a possible scenario, already puts him a step ahead. I'll tell you, talking about training for law enforcement and DT, as you know, I was a DT instructor at the training academy here in Maryland for 3 years, and I stopped when I was told that they're not allowed to have contact anymore. They didn't want recruits punching each other. And as an instructor, I didn't want to take on that liability. I'm like, yeah, there's a risk of them getting injured punching each other. There's a bigger risk of them not punching each other, getting in a fight in the street, and getting their ass handed to them.
And that's stress inoculation.
Exactly.
So we did that their first day of DT in the academy at NARDA. We put 16-ounce boxing gloves on them, and they couldn't stand up and hit each other. They had to get on their knees on the mat, and then it was 30 seconds, go, fight. And the reason we did the knee thing is they can't generate really enough energy because they're not standing. They can't turn to really knock someone out or do some damage. But, man, they felt the glove hit him in the face. And you could kind of tell we were also kind of gauging who'd been trained, who hadn't been trained,
right, and
who would get knocked down and get back up again and keep swinging. And you had that. You had guys, boom, get back up, boom. I cared more that they got back up, not necessarily that they weren't doing especially well on the mat, because, okay, we can fix that guy, but he's got the right mindset. He's going to keep getting up. Then you had other ones that would just curl up into a ball and get pummeled on the mat, and you're like, yeah, we got to work on you. Your mindset, maybe this isn't for you.
Right. So you can't do that on the street.
No.
It's not going to work. Yep.
Nope.
So kind of taking a little turn here on our discussion. So you and I spoke a little bit offline about SHOT Show and kind of like the state of the industry. I had the opportunity to listen to, I guess he's the president or CEO of the NSSF, talk about some of the big names pulling out, and he cited COVID as the reasoning. I guess they got tired of associates coming back from shows sick.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a politics or not. What's IWI doing?
We're going as of now. We're still pressing on. I don't think it was just COVID. Based on some of the things that I've been reading from SIG in particular, I think COVID was their primary thing to say we're not doing this, but there was other reasons that they just opted out of it. I don't know if any other large companies are going to back out. As of now, we're going. We're planning as if it's going to happen. So it takes. We actually planned that out 4 months prior, and then as December starts to wear on, we start spinning up and shipping things out there to make sure it's staged and ready to go. It's a big deal. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
It's a marathon there the whole time. We have no idea what's going to happen though. So the big deciding factor is NSSF. What canceled it last year was Nevada, was Las Vegas specifically, saying that it wasn't safe. And that's what killed SHOT Show last year. We don't know if they're going to step in and do that with the Omicron Ninja variant.
The Decepticon variant.
The Decepticon variant. I like that better.
There's going to be another one by January, so don't worry about it. Don't get hooked on this one.
The Age of Ultron, the Decepticons, they're all going to be out there.
Yeah. Every time a bell rings, you get to name a new variant. I saw.
Yeah, you get a free latte with your 20th booster.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty proud and happy of my relationship with IWI, right, in our store. And I remember when COVID hit, we sold our full inventory in 3 days. We had nothing left on the shelves. And it's been playing catch-up tense. And IWI always took good care of us. But what do you see as trends in the industry now, kind of post the heat of COVID and moving forward?
So a lot of people it's going to drop off. I mean, on that part of it, we know that. Not maybe as much as it normally would, because a lot of people are still really nervous. And the reason I say that is, the Dems in particular have, gotten rid of a lot of law enforcement. They released more criminals, and they're surprised the crime went up. I know it's odd.
Yeah, that works.
Crazy correlation, right? So between the law enforcement agencies being less proactive across the board, them losing a lot of people, and the fact that people are still nervous and want to defend themselves, they're still going to buy next year. I think the issue is making sure that they're trained. I think it was Jeff Cooper says, owning a gun doesn't make you a gunfighter, just like owning a violin makes you suddenly a musician. You got to go train on it. And I think it's important there's a lot of people that are left leaning that suddenly found themselves buying a gun. I know that because in the beginning of it, we were getting calls at customer service. If I want to buy a gun for you, can you send it to my house? And we're like, no. Number one, you can't buy it right from us anyway. Number two, you got to get a background check. And they're like, no, you don't. The news said you don't need a background. It's like, yeah, you do. So they found out very quickly that there were a lot of these gates in place that they needed to walk through to get a gun. But we need to embrace them and their newfound respect and understanding for self-defense. And I think that really kind of messed with the Dems quite a bit, because a lot of their base that were anti-gun suddenly had this realization that, no, defending myself is my right, and I'm going to do this. So they really had a hard time turning on guns because their own base was buying them. So,
and you know what, Tom, as I'm still in active law enforcement, and I'll be the first to say, we're reactive in nature. We're not going to be there in time. I'm a huge fan of arming the citizenry, but even a bigger fan of educating them. And I know IWI, BK, and Masada, we don't just sell the tools, we also sell the education for them. From a law enforcement sense, I can say empirically at least 3 times, I have been backed up by an armed citizen, and I was very grateful for it.
Oh, yeah.
And even more so now in the current state of affairs. The cops ain't going to be there in time. They're just not.
I can be there, and our response time for our agency was 5 minutes, which is pretty good. Well, back when I was on the job, it's less now because we've lost some officers, but it was 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a long time when someone's in your house. A lot of bad things can happen in 5 minutes. And yeah, you're on your own. Yeah. A lot of people have this misnomer. It's government dependence is what it is. It's the government can solve everything, including safety. And yeah, we'll get there eventually. And once we show up, we're going to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to get there. We can, our transporters don't work anymore. I can't teleport myself there. So that would be cool for entry. We have a whole new version of CQB where you teleport in. That'd be great.
I like it. We should definitely start developing something like that. So this podcast is obviously called The Silver Savage, and it's designed for warriors like us. Tell us a little bit about what you do to train. I know you go to the range pretty frequently. What else do you do to take care of yourself?
Besides play with that pink dollhouse.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you could do some cool wound clearing with that thing.
Well, it's a multi-structure. I work on multiple breach points for hostage rescue. Barbie keeps getting taken hostage.
I do the same thing with mine.
Ken's drunk. He's the perpetrator with a pistol. So, you got to do what you got to do.
All right, focus.
What are we talking about again? Oh,
what do you do?
I'm actually trying to get back more into physically better shape. I'll be honest with you. I'm more desk bound, so I'm taking a better approach to eating better. I think I've let myself go a little bit. You travel a lot. You're in different time zones. It wears you down, and I let that slide. That's my fault. From a firearms standpoint, I like to train the things that aren't easy. I'll go out and work a lot of left-handed stuff. I'll do one-handed stuff. Everybody can go out and train. And that's what ends up happening is they get really good with a certain thing and they feel good doing it. And that's what they focus on. And they're good at that one thing, but they don't do well in the other. So perfect example. I had a buddy of mine who was, we had plate racks all over BW. We had these 6 plate racks and he was a ninja about knocking plates down. So from the holster, being able to engage a plate rack and knock all the plates down in under 3 seconds was common for us at the time. We were shooting a lot. I do it in 2.75. This guy would do it in 2.25 seconds, 2.3 seconds, knocking all the plates down. Unbelievable. All right, Bob, we're going to change it up, you asshole, because you beat me. We're going to throw the gun in the support hand from high ready and come in and knock all the plates down. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it in under 4 seconds. Why?
Never
trained. He doesn't work on support side shooting. He works on what he's good at. Wasn't doing it on this side. So awesome at what you do over and over again, but not working on the hard stuff. And then we do another drill. This one is a good one. You can take this with you. We would do a 6 plate rack, and you had to do it in under 5 seconds. You had to come out, shoot 2 plates both hands, shoot 2 plates one hand, shoot 2 plates support hand. And you had to do it in under 5 seconds. So you had to get a hand transition in there. And if you want to see something that's going to humble you, it's going to be that. Try to get it in under 5 seconds. So work the hard stuff. Don't just work all the easy stuff all the time. Once you master it, move on. The other thing that I see is I like to change drills up. You notice that a couple of videos that I did more whiskey. And the whiskey's behind you. I can't get to the whiskey, so it's
behind me and in my hand.
Oh, God dang it. Throw it through the screen.
I was a Marine,
I know. You'll make that shit happen, so make it work. One of the other things that you see, I've done a couple of things on Instagram about changing a drill up, like something that you do all the time, like El Pres drill or something like that, and making it harder. You're like, okay, I've mastered this. I can do this all day long. I can do it in under 7 seconds. I'm a ninja. Change it up. Do something that's difficult. So I will take something that's, that I've already gotten. I've mastered it. And then I will change it so it's way more difficult. And I'll do that on purpose. One of the things I did, it was a shooting on the move drill. I think I talked about it at one point. You start at 25 yards. you run to 20 and you shoot one round at 20 yards shooting on the move. So you transition from running to walking. Then you run to 15 yards and you shoot 2 more from 15 yards shooting on the move. Then you run to 10, go back to transition to walking, and you shoot 3, and you have to hit an 8-inch circle, right? If it's outside the 8-inch circle, it adds time. There's a penalty for misses. Whenever you do any kind of drill, whenever you do any personal training, if there's straight up speed and no focus on accuracy, you're going to shoot like shit. You gotta focus on both things. You got to try and bring those together. Hard as hell. But once I got the pistol part down, then it became shooting, 1 on the move with a rifle, transition to pistol, shoot 2, do things like that. Mix it up. Guys shoot drills so much. Are you guys familiar with the 1 to 5 drill? You've probably seen this 1 to 5 drill. Yeah, shoot 1, shoot 2, shoot 3, then shoot 4 back on the second target, shoot 5 on. They would shoot it over. I saw guys do this. They would shoot it over and over and over again to get it under 3.5 or 3.2 seconds, where all they did was that. Great, you got it. But at that point, are you really learning anything more?
Right.
You're just at that. You don't even need the sights anymore. You're literally able to just through neural pathways kind of know where to stop the gun and hit the target. So, change the target size, do it at further distance. Like we did a version of it at 50 yards on steel plates, a 1 to 5 drill at 50 yards. That's freaking hard to do it in under 10 seconds and have all hits, 15 rounds in 10 seconds. Don't run into a rut where you're doing the same thing over and over again. And you're training kind of like a cop training for a qual. Don't just train for a drill.
Right. Just checking the boxes.
You're checking boxes. Yeah, you look great on Instagram. That's awesome.
But it matters. It's all about how many followers you have.
How many people liked it? Oh my God.
Right?
Oh, must shoot faster. Doesn't matter whether I hit anything as long as I look cool. Right. So
that's awesome. For media and you're in all kind of groups. How could people reach out to you if they have any questions about either IWI or training, anything that you guys offer?
So if you go to the IWI website under IWI Academy, if you just type that into Google, you'll find it. It'll pop up. If you want to reach out to IWI and contact IWI Academy, I read the account. I'm the administrator on that. If you send something to the IWI Academy, I'll see it. And if it's a question, I can answer it. Obviously, I'm on Instagram, and I don't have a cool handle. You got Masada Tactical. What's your handle on Instagram? What's everybody?
That's you, Steve.
What is it? Mine or UBK?
Yours.
Well,
mine's just my name.
Yeah, mine's just my name. I think I need to have something that people can remember. Thomas Alibrando. Nobody remembers that, but.
I was thinking of using like my porn name, but my wife wasn't in agreement with that. So
isn't that like the color of your underwear and what you ate last night?
Well, I mean, yeah, you take your street names, mine was Decatur Wilson, so that would have been my porn name. Decatur Wilson, the Illa Driller, but that just wouldn't fly on Instagram. So
I think you'd probably get more followers instantly.
Maybe I should do that, Tom.
I'm telling you,
you are a wise silver savage.
Silver is right, but I should have some kind of cool name, but I don't. There's a bunch of other guys out there that have the cool ninja names, but I'm just Sicilian dude, old guy.
No, Tom, with your background, you could write a book, so you need a cool name.
So maybe that's just not me. Maybe I'm just not that cool.
Like Tom the Hammer Alibrando. You got to add something in there.
So when I owned a Thompson submachine gun, when I was a cop, I had to sell it because I was the worst mistake I ever made. I had a full auto Thompson. People were calling me Tommy Gun.
There you go.
Nice. Yeah, Tommy Gun.
Tommy Gun Alibrando. Done. I christen you.
Yeah.
He can't.
That wasn't my nickname.
I christen you.
That was not my nickname as a cop, though. You got a nickname once when you came off FTO. somebody in the squad would give you your nickname. And that's what it was for the rest of your career, by the way. You didn't get to choose it. It's like a call sign, like Maverick.
So funny story, and I know we're closing up shop here in a second. So you know how we wear our blood types on our SWAT uniforms and operators. Had a little kid come up to me. He goes, "Excuse me, Mr. APOS," and that became my name for the rest of my career. I was APOS for the rest of
I kind of like that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, though. So, Tom, before we let you go, we like finishing with Steve has a little trivia, and he tries to make it.
Mr. Weapons guy.
Oh God. Hang on, let me get my Google up.
No, this is I could answer one of them, and I'm a foreigner, so you should be good.
All right, so we just like to have a little fun. All right, so first question for you, Tom. Again, all fair. I'm a military history major. This is your first question. The first American-made and military-issued weapon. Now we're talking colonial times.
What was it?
Yeah. All right, I'll give you a hint.
It's hard to say because
it starts with a state name that starts with
Pennsylvania. Well, I was going to say Pennsylvania long rifle.
Yes. So it was actually originally the Pennsylvania long rifle, but Kentucky took the name as the Kentucky long rifle.
Yeah. So I would go with that. But
yes, ding, 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 ding. You got the first question. You're on a roll.
Pennsylvania long. That's awesome. And I'm in Pennsylvania, so it makes sense.
Yeah, you're on a roll, Tom.
That's one.
Next question. All right. So you've worked with all military branches. You know, I'm not going to go into your background because I know for a fact each and every one of us has signed a non-disclosure at some time in their careers. So another name or a military slang name for the belt-fed, crew-served, 50 caliber.
Oh, the Ma Deuce.
There we go. The Ma Deuce.
That's not even hard.
I told you, BK, he wouldn't even have to think about that one.
Yeah.
All right, now your last challenge, Tom. Your last challenge.
Easy.
You got 5 seconds. 5 seconds. All right. I got a little knife hand action going there. You got me all excited. All right. 5 seconds to name 5 Israeli weapons. Go.
Uzi, Jericho, Galil, Negev, and Masada.
All right. You got it wrong because you didn't say BK in any one of those.
BK.
Outstanding. You got it. You got 3 out of 3.
Yay. That's cool. The Pennsylvania long rifle. I don't think most people would get that one.
No, so that was the original, and most people won't. They'll say the Kentucky long rifle, but it's actually the Pennsylvania long rifle.
It started here and then it went south. Yeah.
Correct. So that's a good one. That's
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, good job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I love trivia. And by the way, I was a history minor in college, and I still study it to this day. So I'm with you.
So just for poops and giggles, because I know we're going over time. So you work with military. Look, listen, you work with all military branches, right?
Yeah.
So you've heard the jargon. So this is going to be your bonus trivia questions.
Okay.
All right. What does Army stand for?
Oh, ain't released me yet.
All right, that's one of them. That was one of them. But being a crayon eater, aren't ready to be Marines yet. But I'll give you half a point on that one. All right. What does Marines stand for? Not USMC.
Uncle
we all know Uncle
Misguided
Children. No, that's USMC. We know that one. But what does Marines stand for?
Go. I don't know.
Oh, my ass rides and Navy equipment, sir.
I like that. I haven't heard that one.
And there's the other one, the muscles required, intelligence not essential. All right, that's another one.
Well, you know what SEAL stands for, right?
No, hit us.
Sleep, eat, and lift.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and the last but not least, Navy, since we're talking about Navy, what does Navy stand for?
Never again volunteer yourself.
Yes, and there's another one that's a little more derogatory. That's need any Vaseline yet?
That's for the submariners. That's a whole other. That's a different animal. That's the silent service.
That's very silent.
Very silent.
My first law enforcement job, one of the guys I worked with was a former submariner, and needless to say, the dude was a little weird.
Yeah, they're a different lot, but I think it's the silent service because whatever happens on the sub, nobody wants to talk about it. So it stays in the sub. Now I have a guy who's my partner. He was a USS Parche. He was a submariner too. Smart dude, like incredibly smart. He worked in electronics or something like that on the sub. But yeah, it's funny because he didn't want to talk. He didn't want to talk about what happened in the sub. No, he never talked about his job or where they went or what they did. It was actually, I mean, you could tell it was like legit secret squirrel shit. So I respected that about him, no problem.
Awesome. Well, you're the first person to pretty much get everything right so far. So
if you ask enough questions, I guarantee you I'm going to get something wrong. So keep going and I'll hit something. It'll be wrong.
Then I'm going to stop. We'll end on a high
note, right?
Right. Tom, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at SHOT Show at the latest. And are you going to be at any of the conferences, GTOA, OTOA, any of those?
All of them.
Awesome. So I'll see you there as well. And as always, it's always a pleasure, brother.
And Tom, I look forward to being one of your students here soon.
Absolutely. Come on out. I look forward to having you. And we'll have a lot of fun, guys.
I'll bring the whiskey.
Not on the range when we're done. Absolutely.
So I have a flask that looks like an AR mag, so you wouldn't know anyway.
I think I'll shoot. I think we need the whiskey for the sniper school because, your heart rate lowers. You shoot better, point blank.
This is a fact.
Yeah.
Science.
One of the best quals. I shouldn't say this. It's just so bad. One of the best quals I ever did. I was a SEAL. I had drinks with him the night before. I was so hungover, but I shot like incredible. Like it hurt the whole time. Boom, boom. Like people were looking at me like, "You all right, man?" I'm like, "No, I'm not."
I think my best PT score in basic training. My best PT score was after a night of drinking.
Was it?
I think just because everything was numb.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't feel pain, no brain, right?
Hey, mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter.
That's exactly right.
Gentlemen.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see, Tom.
I'll see you. Take
Good
care.
night.
Cheers.